Hello, this is Palico Padge and welcome back to another Sleepy Sunday episode of the game The Away Team Lost Exodus added content. We're checking it out, we're doing alright. I'm a bit melancholy with this playthrough, to be completely honest with you. We've come across two different ships which were sent forth from the Earth before we were on our toddle. Us being the last ship, by the way. And all that we found is abject disaster and pain and anguish and ultimately failure. Everyone else so far has failed. There's been no happy endings in sight. It's all been a bit miserable, in all fairness. I was hoping that we'd be full of hope and interesting missions like Captain Kirk had in the original series of Star Trek, and we get to kiss green women. But no, alas no, we are but small bit part actors in a crazy machines play over the end of that ship. And you know, I suppose it had to be played out for him. It made him feel at ease. It's settled, done. But we're just all bummed out, and as it stands we have no food whatsoever. We currently have one food. I've got plenty of fuel. Don't think I'll be drinking any spaceship fuel anytime soon, but hey, it may come to that. So let's crack on and hope for a slightly more happier story this time around, I suppose. As it turns, we only have the one planet in this entire section, which is good because, as I said, our food's gone pretty much. And here we are. Oh, it's looking very planety. Object type planet, object mass Terran, not too bad. Surface temperature -15. That's doable. That's doable. I believe in Chicago this year it was down to -40, and they all got around all right. Me personally in the UK, -5 is enough. It gets a bit chilly after that. I've got to put on a second pair of socks, and that's just one step too far as far as I'm concerned. Atmosphere is error. That's not a good sign. Gravity, it's a bit high, a bit on the high side. We might shrink a little. Habitability, error. Summary, sensors are not getting a good reading on this planet, so it's unwise to send the crew down. You instruct the crew to remain on the ship and detach the shuttle for a quick excursion to scoop up some raw materials. Oh. Wow. Here we go then. There are two spots where it seems like you might have a good chance of harvesting food. You only have time for one of them, however, and in either case it's going to be a very quick pass. So do we want the equatorial desert or the Arctic savanna? Essentially they're both deserts. We've got the dry desert and the cold desert. I mean, theoretically, where does most food lie in the world here that we're on right now? Earth, that is. I suppose you could argue the equatorial desert has more animals than the Arctic savanna. But maybe that's what they want you to think. Maybe by choosing the desert, we're actually choosing the less because it's such an obvious answer. Maybe I'm just overthinking it. Let's go for equatorial desert. Back on the ship, Dr. Phil volunteers to remote pilot the shuttle. They perform capably. Well done, Phil. With the airlock open, the shuttle dips down low and collects a sample of organic matter, then heads quickly back to the ship. By the time it docks, the onboard drones have sorted through the collected material and purged anything harmful. So we've got 2 food off that. That was bloody rubbish. That was bloody rubbish. So we're stuck now. I suppose we better go north. It's the closest place to be, really. And we'll jump as soon as we can. Pop. So that was rubbish. There's no hiding that. I can't gloss that up any more than what it was. That is a turd with not even any sprinkles of glitter on. It was just a turd. And, well, a slightly tasty turd, I suppose. It was 2 food, but even so, a turd nonetheless. Oh, and look, it's going to make us travel all that way to Finney 61. Oh, we're going to get hit by nasty food missions, aren't we? Oh, look at that. Oh. Okay. Same again. Okie dokie. Oh, okay. So this time we can choose from an equatorial grassland or temperate jungle. I mean, it sounds better, grassland. That sounds good. Temperate jungle? Arguably there's more animals in a jungle than there is on a grassland. But then again, there's probably larger animals on the grassland than there is in the jungle. You know what? We've chosen collection site 1 before. Let's go for collection site 2. That's a little bit better. With the airlock open, the shuttle dips down low and collects a sample. I've read all this thing. We've got 4 food. That's all we need to know. Let's leave, shall we? I mean, should we go to the left? Let's go to the left. Alright, so it's slightly larger turd that time. It's still a turd, but it was slightly larger. Oh, okay. Panshin 68. We're flying in with no food. This is either going to end very well or it's just going to end. Oh, it's a big blue planet. So we've got another planet, which is good. Terran, 5 Celsius surface temperature. You know, it's jumper weather, but it's not too cold. Atmosphere, around about 90% oxygen. That's all right, I suppose. Gravity is a little bit lower. Habitability, 62.58. That's not bad. That's not bad. Summary, water. Water everywhere. Drinkable? Probably not. The surface of the planet below appears to be more than 90% covered in water, and it's likely too saline for safe drinking without processing. But it's also just one of many signs that there is life here, of some sort. A radio signal from somewhere below the waves, alas, indecipherable, seems to indicate that something intelligent was here at one point. But there are no hails, no signs of technology, nothing but questions. What can only be answered by deploying the crew. Oh! Guess we're going down. Guess we are going down. I mean, do we take everyone? The habitability is high. The habitability is high. I think we shall. I think we shall. Who's my best leader? Who's my best leader? It's going to be Jean-Luc. Jean-Luc in your toddle. Geordie is my engineer. Dr. Phil. You know what? Space Wizard. You can be the medic. Dr. Phil. You know what? We're going to leave Dr. Phil. Dr. Phil's going to keep me company up here. I need someone to polish my knobs and dials. Yes, yes. Let's deploy. The shuttle descends rapidly to a fairly low altitude, but then spends several hours searching for a suitable place to land. There are ample reefs and atolls here and there, but nothing that would serve as anything more than a landing pad. Large islands with features worthy of note seem to evade the crew, until at last the sensors pick up a reasonably large archipelago about halfway between a pole and the equator. As the shuttle settles on a relatively soft patch of sand, you remind the crew that although the atmosphere here seems hospitable, it is bright, sunny and survivably warm, and the air is breathable, that they should remain safely inside their atmospheric suits for the time being, especially with all the water around. The crew begins by poking around the shore. Even though the island is long enough to be worth exploring further, it's narrow enough to still be mostly shoreline with very little inland, so this is a logical place to start. While they concern themselves with sand, you do some geological surveys to get a fix on tectonic shift and other such matters. The planet certainly has some interesting features, among them being a remarkably shallow ocean with only a few large tectonic plates. Most of the islands are in one single ring that runs around more or less continuously around the planet. Or something like that. None of this is anything the crew would care about, so you don't bother them with it. Find anything interesting, yes? Negative, says Jean-Luc Picard. Lots of sand and some empty shells. Not good for much except maybe making jewellery. Shells definitely would seem to indicate life of some sort, which is nothing, if nothing else, would mean a food source. Considering the terrain, the logical place to search would be in the water. Why don't you get your feet wet, you ask? Proceed cautiously, of course, but I think it's worth looking around a bit further offshore. As is typical, Space Wizard doesn't really heed the part of the instruction, but includes the word cautious. That includes the word cautious, and wanders out a bit deeper than they should. Fortunately, Jean-Luc Picard notices and yells at them to get back closer to shore. Space Wizard does as they are told. Well done, Space Wizard! Aside from a few near stumbles and falls, the next hour or so is uneventful. The crew continues to explore along the shoreline, moving cautiously. There's something odd about the shells, says Jean-Luc Picard. They focus on a few areas in particular, and you zoom in on the camera feed to take a look. They're not distributed randomly, like you'd expect. There are a few different colours and sizes, and they seem clustered. Maybe. What do you think? You have the crew walk back and forth a few times to gather some more data, and you have to agree that the shells do not appear to be distributed randomly. This is rather odd, seeing as the majority of them are underwater or right on the shore, and the wave action should be moving them around unpredictably. Unless the waves are not random either. What now? Asked Jean-Luc Picard. Well, we can explore the island more, or we can head out a bit deeper into the shallows. That's kind of a double negative, a contradiction. That's the word I'm looking for. How can you head deeper into the shallows? Further out, maybe, but not deeper. But I digress. Let's do it. You direct the crew to wade out further into the water surrounding the island. We already did that, says Jean-Luc Picard. No, I mean deeper, you reply. Up over your heads. Oh, nothing that bad ever happened. The crew seems a bit concerned at this prospect, but you do your best to assure them that they will be able to breathe well enough underwater for an extended period of time. There are self-contained atmospheric suits, you remind them. You can survive in space for quite a long time, and that's vacuum. You'll be fine underwater. For a while, at least. Just don't go jumping off any cliffs into the bottomless abyss and nothing will go wrong. That means you, Space Wizard. Oh, Space Wizard, you cheeky monkey. The water remains relatively shallow for quite some distance away from the island itself, allowing the crew to descend at a slow pace and get accustomed to the idea of being underwater. The slower pace also helps keep the water a bit more clear. Every step kicks up clouds of debris that make it harder and harder to see, even with helmet lights on. But there's nothing to be done for that, so you don't even mention it. Once the crew is about 10 metres or so down, you have them stand still for 15 minutes or so, to try and let the water clear somewhat. They fidget and fuss a bit, but manage it, and once some of the sediment settles, you instruct them to pan their heads around without moving their feet. They mostly manage to do as asked. Hey, check that out, says Geordie LaForge. They move their heads slowly, ever so slowly, and the light from their helmet lamps catches sight of something off in the distance, moving. It appears to be a tiny mollusk of some sort, moving along with the current, but also clearly very much alive. Now that the water is much clearer, the crew can even see their feet, and looking down at the surface, they can tell that it's covered not just by sand and empty shells, but living creatures, scurrying over one another and, you imagine, also probably feasting on one another. The vast majority of the shells are clearly empty, though, and the entire landscape seems to be just one immense pile of detritus, though evidently stacked firmly enough to support the weight of the crew, at least so far. Do we harvest some of the creatures, or do we go a little bit deeper? I mean, we could harvest some creatures. There might be food. We might be able to pull them into some sort of pulp. Yeah, give it a whirl, I suppose. You should really grab some of those things, you say. They're probably going to be at least semi-useful as a food source. Plus, while this isn't technically a science mission we're on, it might be worth gathering some data on these things. We can figure out if they're related to Earth mollusks, or some sort of parallel evolution, or toxic. And do you have any suggestion for how we collect specimens of tiny underwater creatures while we ourselves are underwater with nothing to collect them with? Asked Jean-Luc Picard. Grow some baleen, just grab a few, give it some thought anyway. I suppose that's a good point. You can't argue with logic, at least logically. I have no idea what baleen is. Just grab a few, give it some thought anyway. I mean, we could put them in Space Wizard's hat. That'd work, maybe. Give it some thought anyway, I suppose. I already have, says Space Wizard, and I think that we should save that until we're sure we're on our way out. We have no idea what they are, so we should minimise contact. So we don't kill them, you ask? That too, they say, and the other way around. Fair enough, Space Wizard. Logic, can't argue with it. On second thought, you say, maybe we should save the collection until we're on our way out. No sense hauling a bucket of whatever all the way downhill and then back up again. That would require a bucket anyway, says Jean-Luc Picard, unless you want me to use my helmet. Well, since you're volunteering, you say. Yeah, stop being such a douche, Jean-Luc. Jeez. So negative. You're a glass half empty kind of guy, I can see this. You're not the Jean-Luc I know. No. Grab what you can and return to the surface, or should we go deeper? Should we go deeper? Do we push our luck? Yeah, let's do it. It's too early to pull the crew out. This world is probably unsuitable for long-term habitation for them due to the lack of natural resources above the surface of the water. It's crucial then that they get as much as they can before they leave. There's clearly a food source here and it should be exploited as much as possible. They only get one shot at this. Your atmospheric suits are probably good down to at least 500 metres, you say. Maybe up to 1,000, down to the upper aphotic zone, if there is one. But let's try not to test that extreme. It doesn't take much longer for the decision to pay off. Once the crew has reached a depth of about 50 metres, the slope begins to level off somewhat, and the density of living mollusks, if that's what they are, increases substantially. The majority are rather unremarkable, being a pale grey colour, but here and there the camera picks up a flash of colour as a particularly interesting specimen darts across the ground. It appears that the shelf the crew is on suddenly ends, maybe 30 or 40 metres off, with a presumably steep drop off into the who knows what beyond. Fortunately, none of the crew is close enough to worry about an unintentional tumble down into an unknown abyss. Do you see that over there where the edge just seems to drop off? Asks Geordie LaForge. The little critters near the edge, they never really fall off. Some of them just seem to tumble around a bit and then drift back onto the shelf, like there's something moving them around. Convection? Harvest some specimens and leave, or investigate the edge of the shelf. Oh, they're asking for trouble. That's what they want me to do, isn't it? Oh, I don't know. I mean, it's big enough here. We can't stay. Do we just call it quits? Ah, curiosity. It's going to kill us. It's going to kill us. Despite our potential, we'll start that again. Despite any potential danger, you know the crew can't resist the urge to peer off the edge of the cliff into whatever lies below. So you tell them to get on their bellies and scurry along slowly to take a safe look. There's some initial apprehension since this means crawling amidst a moving blanket of gastropods, but they get over it and eventually reach the edge. Is that a ship? Asked Jean-Luc Picard. It is, or at least it's part of one. Apparently over 100 metres long and at least half buried in sediment, approximately 50 metres below the crew. It would be shrouded in darkness if it wasn't generating its own light, pinpricks of white and red amidst the dark blue gloom. Is it one of ours? Asked Geordie LaForge. Almost certainly, you say. My guess is it's not an entire ship, just a large piece of one, like the shuttle is part of our ship. That's a very big shuttle, says Jean-Luc Picard. The older ships were much larger, you say. The earliest Aleph-class ships were kilometres long but had no shuttles, just ejection pods. This looks more like a late Omega, possibly an earlier Epsilon. The Omegas didn't have a shuttle per se, but they could fragment for landing purposes. That sounds more graceful than it probably was, more like controlled crashing. We need to get down there, says Space Wizard. Before you can get a word in edgewise, they swing their legs over the edge of the shelf and begin a somewhat controlled descent. You're not worried about the down part, it's getting back up that will be a problem. Yeah, I didn't give you guys permission. You could be leaving Dr. Phil all alone here. Send the remaining crew after them? I mean, Space Wizard's gone. Do we risk everyone? Is that all for one and one for all? Screw it. Let's do it. It's when I feel like I'm being harangued along here. It's when they're being most human that you most want to murder them. Regardless, your hand has been forced. You tell the rest of the crew to follow Space Wizard down into the depths to explore the ship. The hulk of the submerged ship looks relatively intact, at least considering the fact that it's not an entire ship, and if there are any other places, they're nowhere to be seen. As the crew gets closer, it becomes a bit clearer why this is the case. That's Omega Epsilon, you say. Kind of big for a kid's toy, says Jean-Luc Picard. Does it transform into a dinosaur? Omega Epsilon was a transitional ship, you tell them, ignoring the joke. Smaller and faster than an Omega class, but an Epsilon class. Or an Epsilon class. It was like a scale model for an Epsilon. I believe it carried some experimental sensor upgrades, but I'm not sure where they would be. From what I can tell, this is the rear third of the entire thing, so we may be in luck. The front and middle would have been crew, but the rear was where all the mechanicals were. You do some quick math based on how long the crew's been below the water already and map it against how big the ship is, and you come to the conclusion that they only realistically have time to explore a small portion. Where should they focus their efforts, though? The front adjacent to cargo, cryo storage, or the back near engineering? Well, you know what? We're fine for fuel, so I'm not too fussed about going near engineering. It might mean we get a bit of a sensor upgrade, but there's a chance we could get food from the cryo storage section. So let's go cryo storage. As directed, the crew approaches the front segment of the wreckage, expecting a ragged hole but finding instead a smooth, sealed surface with intact bulkhead and airlocks. Sea life flourishes around this portion of the ship, the crew unavoidably killing hundreds of creatures underfoot as they walk along. The water is noticeably warmer here too, which may explain the presence of so much sea life. Clearly, some mechanisms on board the ship were still functional. You wonder how long it's been down here. You know it left Earth on August the 5th, 2125, but that means nothing now. So again, we can get some food and get out of here, or we can open the airlock. You know what? We've come this far. Let's carry on. The airlock door appears intact and functional, and appears in line with the specifications recorded in your databanks. Without any pressure differential, opening the door is a fairly safe proposition, so you instruct the crew to do so. Since there never was any special code locking involved on internal portals, the circular hatch opens without trouble, sliding easily into the bulkhead. You're not entirely clear what use this portion of the ship was put to, being adjacent to the cryo chambers. It would likely have been medical in nature. Clearly the ship has been underwater for some time, and completely flooded for at least most of that. That means that, disappointingly, the interior of this part of the ship is fairly empty. But for more of the mollusk creatures and some long, stringy black masses, there might have been just about anything at one point. Temperature recordings are interesting. Inside this portion of the ship, it is at least 20 degrees warmer. Not hot enough to sous vide the crew inside their atmospheric suits, but enough to raise questions. Okay. You have the crew explore a bit further inside, and as soon as they walk through an interior portal, you call an immediate halt. Jean-Luc Picard slowly pan your camera around the entire room, you say. The entire hallway is covered ceiling, floor, and walls with countless tiny egg sacs, pale grey things fluttering in the current caused by the open door like deflated balloons. They could be from the mollusks found everywhere nearby, but they seem larger than necessary for such small creatures. Oh, again, it's like my head is telling me to leave, but my essence, my whole entire being is telling me to keep exploring. I think I've seen this film. Keep exploring. You instruct the crew to proceed into the ship with caution. Jean-Luc Picard takes a moment and then steps further into the room. There's something, they say, shaking their head. I don't know how to describe it. It's faint, like a smell or sound that's too quiet to make out. I don't think it's affecting me beyond that. I'm not picking anything up on any of your suit's sensors, you say. Continue for now, but if it gets any worse, say something. The hallway extends further than the crew's helmet lamps can illuminate. Moats, sand, and bits of egg sac drifting through the water reduce visibility significantly. Although you are able to track their movement from orbit without problems, suit readings show significant heart rate and adrenaline elevations. Hey, says Geordie LaForge, is that a doorway up ahead? As the crew approaches, you note that the wall surrounding the doorway is clear of the egg sacs that cover every other surface to the extent that the crew entirely misses that opposite the open door. Start that again. That's a really long sentence. As the crew approaches, you note that the wall surrounding the doorway is clear of the egg sacs that cover every other surface to the extent that the crew entirely misses that opposite the open door is a closed one. Both doors have signs above them, but neither of them are legible. So do we go for the open doorway or see if there's a way to open the closed door? We're not turning around. No. I mean, we could try and open the closed door. One would take that the door is closed and therefore no one's been in it, and therefore if there was anything to nab off the ship, it'd be in there. So let's do that, shall we? If anything is likely to be intact and not covered by layers of sea growth, it's going to be behind a closed door. You ask the crew to see if they can open it. Aha, says Geordie LaForge, prying open a door release override panel. After bleeding the door control pistons, the door slides smoothly into the bulkhead. Inside, the crew's helmet lamps illuminate some kind of lab. None of the computer interfaces in the room seem functional, and it's unclear what kind of work was done here. There are several bio-storage cans to stack beneath a workbench, and in the centre of the room is a cryopod. Space Wizard looks over the pod. This is powered. I can't tell if it's occupied or not, but it seems to be running. Status lights on the pod indicate that some kind of malfunction has occurred, but what that means for the pod's occupant, if it is occupied, is not clear. Assuming the Omega Epsilon's cryopods as the same as the ones on board the Argo, its power regulators can hold enough charge that it would be disconnected and brought to the surface before shutting down. The canisters, on the other hand, are far more portable and are likely to contain something that can be converted to food. Oh my life! What a decision. Do I take the food or do I take the possible person? I mean, we need the food. We need the food. Our crews do not. I'd feel guilty if I didn't take the canisters, but that could kill us all. Sorry, the pod, but that would kill us all if we can't find any food. And I presume it's going to take all of them to carry it back, so we won't be able to collect any food on the way back anyway. Oh dear. I mean, it's been here a while. We are the last ship. That's the end of the thing. No one else is going to come across. You know what? The guilt would get to me. I'm going to have to disconnect the pod. Finding a new home for what's left of humanity is your mission, and that includes any you might find along the way. You tell to disconnect the cryopod and carry it outside. The pod is quickly detached and the crew is able to maneuver it outside without incident. Even though they were primarily intended for use in zero gravity, the cryopods used in interstellar ships were designed to be light and easily carried. At this depth, the pod is naturally buoyant. The crew is understandably eager to return to the surface, but even if they weren't, oxygen levels will become a concern soon. Simply swimming back up to the shaft many meters above is not an option, not inside a heavy atmospheric suit. The suits were not designed for underwater use. Right, so we can walk along the base of the cliff looking for an incline or climb up the hard way. I mean, we've got a big cryopod. We're going to have to look for an incline. It's slow going, but after an extra couple of hours, the crew is able to locate a gentle slope incline and make their way back up. It's pitch black by the time they surface, and their suit oxygen levels are lower than is comforting. But before they collapse from exhaustion, they manage to drag the pod aboard the shuttle. The crew's suit readings make their exhaustion clear, but in spite of that, they rush to carry the pod down to the cryonics section of the crew quarters. By all calculations, the pod still has at least an hour's worth of power remaining, and the ship's drones are capable of carrying the pod. Their assistance won't change what's in the pod. You sense that the crew need this, though, so you allow them to feel useful. The pod is quickly hooked up to one of the redundant cryonic bays, and you're able to interface with its systems and determine that the reported malfunction is with the unit's cooling system. Multiple critical components show signs of heat damage, and from what your sensors tell you of what's inside the pod, its occupant died long ago. Bugger. Well, that was a waste. Shall we tell them that it's dead? I think they deserve to know the truth. They did haul it all that way. I'd hate to tell them it was empty. You tell the crew that the pod's occupant had been dead for years. Their disappointment is evident, but their need for rest is greater. They quickly disperse to find food and sleep as you have drones disconnect the pod and transport it to the machine shop. Some of the pod's parts are salvageable, and what's left of its occupant could easily be fed into the food replicator. Salvage the pod's components, convert its occupant's remains to food, or jettison the pod into space. I'm sorry. We turned down food before. I can't turn down this chance of food again. And we'll get some components as well. You coordinate drones to siphon the pod's contents into the food replicator. While the process is underway, Jean-Luc Picard wakes and wanders into the machine shop. I guess it makes sense to not let anything go to waste, says Jean-Luc Picard. I just wish we knew more about who they were and what happened to them. The pod's logs and records were corrupted, you say, but I was able to ascertain that the occupant's name was Savio Cratch and that they had likely been placed in stasis since before the Omega Epsilon departed Earth. You would hope to be able to find more answers, but maybe there was never any answers to be found. So we've got no fuel, but we did get 13 food, which is awesome. Tippity top. And no one has died, which is even better. So that wasn't so bad. It was a bit of a morbid undercurrent to the story, but we found food. So I can live with that. I can live with that. Let's check out the crew. Jean-Luc. What have you got, friend? Sunken ship photo. A suit cam photo captured by Jean-Luc Picard of the sunken Omega Epsilon ship on Passion 68. Oh, well, there you go. Building up slowly. Tip top. Where should we go? Let's go to the right. Let's see what else we got. Oh, summary. Although your missions isn't a scientific one, there are a number of stellar and interstellar phenomena you have been programmed to observe and study should the opportunity arise. Possible benefits range from expanding the boundaries of human knowledge to discoveries that may lead to improvement of ship systems. There's also value in giving the crew something to focus on for a while. Why not? So I'm just reading it quickly to see if there's anything which we don't need to see. So, possible benefits arrangement, we've done that bit. Long-range sensors didn't pick it up. The first indication you had was when it came into view on the ship's external cameras. You call the crew into the shuttle to discuss. In the distance is an almost intensely blue-white neutron star surrounded by the fading remnants of a past supernova. Perform a cursory inspection. Neutron stars, being formed by the gravitational collapse of the cores of massive stars following supernova explosions, have been observed from great distance since the mid-1900s, but intense gravity and radiation have made opportunities for close study rare. The ship is capable of withstanding more of both than most of the probes humans sent out. Gravitational forces will require a degree of fuel expenditure, though. That's fine. The prospects of taking time out to research something new seem to excite the crew. I've never seen anything like this, says Space Wizard. Look at that, says Space Wizard, pointing out details to the rest of the crew. Clearly they are eager to study further. Jean-Luc Picard seems too awed to speak, but their mouths make a wow shape. Well, we've got the fuel. Let's do it. You plot a course into an orbit a safe distance out from the neutron star. A more detailed study is possible, but it will take a few days, time during which the crew will need to eat. Let's do it. You train the ship's sensors on the neutron star for several days, observing its spin and pulses. You calculate it to have been formed from a star with a mass in excess of 10 times Sol. Wow. Eventually you exhaust the meaningful observations that you expect to make. So let's analyze the collected data then. The data collected is revealing but not practically usable. Before departing, a dense cloud of organic matter is in an extreme orbit, passes close enough to collect, which you are able to use to replenish food stores. Scientific curiosity satisfied, you plot a course away from AR EM226-6438. So we've got -4 fuel, which is fine, +1 food, which is great. So it's worth doing. And we shall leave it there. Let's carry onwards and upwards and downwards, and don't think there's any other ways we can go. And we'll have a quick look at this. So we've got Orwell 64 and Benford 65. Benford! And here is where we shall leave this episode. So we are no longer struggling for food. Although it is relatively low, we're not on death's door. We've got plenty of fuel still. And more importantly, no one's died. And this time around, next time around, we will have 2 places to go, have a look-see at, and hopefully get some more answers onto what the bloody hell we should be doing. So thank you for watching. As always, a like is appreciated, and I'll catch you on the next one. Take it easy.